agenda item for tonight, thank you, Jeremy, for the sound, is the administration of the oath of office. I know we have one member who is running late, but we do have a new member here. So, Ms. Moran, if you would join me, we'll stand up right up here. You can raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, Monica Moran,
I, Monica Moran,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States of America,
the Constitution and laws of the United States of America,
the Constitution and statutes of the State of Ohio,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Gahanna,
and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Gahanna,
and that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and that it will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
as a Property Appeals Board member
as a Property Appeals Board member
for the City of Gahanna,
for the City of Gahanna,
to which I have been appointed,
to which I have been appointed.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right. You keep one, the clerk gets one. That's for your special framing at home. And your special. There you go. All right, Mr. Clerk, are you ready? All right. So I will now officially call this meeting to order. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Moran,
Present.
Collier,
Present.
Rourke,
Present.
Smith, and Sweeney is absent.
And I realize I neglected the Pledge of Allegiance, so we'll do it a little out of order if that's okay with you, Mr. Clerk. Let's please rise. Ms. Moran will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, for your flexibility. All right, our first item of business is election of chair. So I will now officially open the floor to nominations for chair. Do we have a nomination?
Madam Mayor, I would like to nominate Sarah Pollier to chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rourke, for that nomination. Are there any other nominations? Ms. Pollier, do you accept that nomination?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you very much. So now I need a motion to elect Sarah Pollier as chair for the 2024 Property Appeals Board year. So
moved.
Ms. Moran moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Rourke, second. Any discussion? I'm assuming not. All right. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Moran,
Yes.
Rourke,
Yes.
Collier,
Yes.
Smith is absent, and Sweeney is absent.
All right, well, but that is majority, so majority rules. Congratulations, Ms. Pollier. I will now officially turn this meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll switch seats. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And now we will move to the election of vice chair. I now open the floor to nominations for vice chair. And I would like to nominate Jason Rourke for vice chair. I'll second.
Do we have a second? Sorry. Does the nominee accept?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to elect Jason Rourke as vice chair?
So moved.
Do I have a second? I'll second that. And we have a motion by Monica Moran, second by myself. Any discussion? Nope. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Moran,
Yes.
Pollier,
Yes.
Rourke,
Yes.
and Smith and Sweeney are absent.
The motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. Rourke. You are now the vice chair, and you can come and sit. I'll move my coat out of the way. There we go. Back here. Okay. Is there any additional business for this organizational meeting? Okay, with no further business, I now adjourn the meeting at 6:06 PM. Meeting is adjourned. Okay. So now we'll move on to the regular meeting, and I now call the regular meeting to order. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Pollier,
Yes.
Moran,
Yes.
Rourke,
Here.
Smith and Sweeney are absent.
Okay, we'll move on to additions or corrections to the agenda. And I believe that we do not have any additions or corrections to the agenda. Am I correct? I think so. All right, we'll move on to approving the minutes from our last meeting, which was December 7th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
So we have a motion by Monica Moran, a second by Jason Rourke. Any discussion? No. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Moran,
Yes.
Rourke,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Smith and Sweeney are absent.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is we don't have any new business this evening. I'd like to poll all the members for comment. Ms. Moran, do you have any comments?
I appreciate the opportunity to serve on this committee and look forward to doing the future work.
Wonderful. Mr. Rourke, yourself?
Just want to welcome everyone back and welcome Monica.
And I will echo that as well. Looking forward to getting started with new items this year and welcome our new member as well. So with no further business, I now adjourn this meeting, which is at 6:08 PM. We are adjourned.
Board of Zoning and Building Appeals. Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. Our first item of sworn in this evening, Mr. Obie Stillwell and Mr. Mike Burmeister. So gentlemen, if you could join me up here in front of the flag. You two want-
Charter and ordinance of the city of Gahanna.
And that I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
That will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
this is a long one, as a Board of Zoning and a Building Appeals member,
as a Board of Zoning and Appeals.
Building Appeals
Building
member,
Appeals
as BZBA member, for the city of Gahanna,
for the city of Gahanna,
to which I have been appointed,
which I have been appointed.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
And before we sit, if I could invite Mr. Still, oh wait, no, I got to call the meeting to order, don't I? Thank you. I'm getting there. Getting ahead of myself. I forgot the pledge at the last meeting. I was so anxious. I didn't want to forget it again. All right, now, I will officially call this meeting to order. Now, I would invite you to please stand and join us as Mr. Stillwell leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Beckman.
Here.
Bryson.
Here.
Burmeister.
Here.
Eisen.
Here.
Stillwell.
here.
Thank you very much. Our first item of official business is the election of a chair for the 2024 season. So I will now open the floor to nominations for chair. Do I have a nomination? Don't all yell at once.
I think Mr. Eisen did admirably last term. I would nominate him if he would be willing to accept it.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any further nominations? All right. Hearing none, I do need now a motion to elect Mr. Eisen as chair for the 2024 season. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Second. Any discussion? No? All right. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Beckman.
Yes.
Stillwell.
Yes.
Bryson.
Yes.
Eisen.
Yes.
Burmeister.
Yes.
All right, majority, motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. Eisen, and I will officially turn this meeting over to you. You can sit here. You have it, okay.
At this time, we need to elect a vice chair of the BZBA, and so I will now open nominations for that role. Well, I will start. No, go ahead,
I was
Ross.
going to say I will nominate Paul Bryson again, as he served last time and did a great job.
I don't object to that. I'd be happy to do it again.
Is there a second?
I
Mr.
second.
Bryson?
I second that motion.
All right. With that, let's take a roll call, please.
I'm sorry, who was the motion?
For,
We only had a nomination, and then you asked for a second, I think. I
Okay.
don't think we had a motion in that.
yes,
Motion.
motion,
I motion for his nomination.
okay, and second?
I second the motion.
All right. Roll call?
Burmeister.
Yes.
Stillwell.
Yes.
Eisen.
Yes.
Beckman. Bryson.
Yes.
All right. Well, that is the end of the first part of our meeting. So at this point, I will adjourn the organizational meeting, And now we will move forward with the meeting for this evening and the hearing that we're going to hear. So anyway, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January 18th meeting of the Board of Zoning and Building Appeals. We've done the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't think we need to do that again, but we do formally need to do a roll call because we have started a second meeting.
Beckman? Here. Bryson?
Here.
Eisen?
Here.
Burmeister?
Here.
Stillwell?
Here.
All right. Our next order of business is additions or corrections and then approval of the agenda. Are there any other agenda items that we need to add this evening? All right. We'll take that as the agenda is correct and complete as presented. The next thing that we need to do is approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Our last meeting was in September 28th of 2023. I do know that there were two new members, congratulations, of our board who were not part of that meeting. We are going to vote on approving the meeting minutes. You have the option of either approving, disapproving, or you can abstain because you weren't part of the hearing. That is up to both of you. So at this point, let's have a motion. I will start the motion to approve the meeting minutes, the last meeting minutes of the Board of Building and Zoning Appeals from September 28th, 2023. Is there a second?
I'd second. They were long, but they look correct.
All right. At this point, let's move forward with a roll call.
Eisen?
Yes.
Bryson?
Yes.
Burmeister? Stillwell?
Abstain.
Beckman?
Yes.
All right. The motion passes with a majority saying yes. At this time, I will turn to our new city attorney to swear in those who will be part of the proceedings this evening.
Certainly. Will all those who intend to speak as part of the proceedings please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
All right. Our appeal this evening is BZA-0002-2023, to consider an appeal of Planning Commission's denial of V-0018-2023, a variance application to vary sections 1165.09A4B, 1165.09A4C, and 1165.09A4D of the codified ordinances of the City of Gahanna, and denial of DR 0016-2023, a design review application for a monument sign for property located at 807 Havens Corners Roads, parcel ID 025-003900, current zoning RID, St. Matthew's Monument sign, George Harvey, applicant. I'll ask the clerk, in alignment with Chapter 147 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Gahanna, have all of the proper paperwork been filed on time, fees been paid, and all the other kind of paperwork requirements?
That is correct.
Excellent. Before we start, there was a document that was not part of the board's actions or the board's information that we were able to review before the meeting. At this time, we have the option to accept it. I don't believe anybody's probably even had a minute to look at it here. Maybe the appellant will review it for us. Do we need a motion to accept this as documentation for this evening, to pass it in that manner?
I believe that would be at the time that you would accept all evidence. At this time, it would just be open to the floor if there were any objections to considering this, given the timing.
Okay. Any objections?
No objections to the document.
And you have the document there in
Yes,
front of you
we'll
also?
see how they use it, but no objection. It's a standard Department of Transportation
Okay,
document.
so we don't need to vote on it at this point? Okay, thank you very much. All right, so according to the Rules of Procedure for the Board of Zoning Appeals, the City of Gahanna, Ohio, we will move forward as followed. The appellant will be allowed 25 minutes. This is combined time for the appellant and any interested party. The appellee will then equally have 25 minutes. Again, also any other interested party. We will move back again to the appellant, who will have 5 minutes for any further argument or rebuttal, and again, the same for the appellee. So, if there is no misunderstanding, or I'm all clear there, we will move forward, and I will ask a representative of the appellant to come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and again, you will have 25 minutes to move forward.
Thank you very much. My name is Deacon Christopher Walsh. I am an ordained deacon in the Catholic Church. I'm also an attorney at law, licensed to practice law in the state of Ohio, Ohio Supreme Court registration number 0065257. I respectfully request that the board reverse the decision made previously and allow the church to present the sign as requested. And in looking at the rules that the City of Gahanna has put forth, purpose, which is 1165.01, one of the things I think needs to be understood is that under Section A, it says, quote, "This chapter is based on the premise that signs are subject to control as much as noise, odor, debris, and other similar characteristics of land use." I would respectfully disagree with that because signs are communication devices and therefore they are speech. And speech is protected by the Constitution of the United States under the First Amendment. And that requires a different analysis than things such as noise, odor, debris, and other similar characteristics. So we believe that the sign should be permitted because of the nature of the sign itself. And in my understanding of the objection, the primary objection, and the objection that we would need the variance for, is the ability to provide various messages. And the church would like to provide 4 messages. At this point, it was a 30-second rotation. We are open to a longer rotation, so long as it's not 1 per day, because we have 4 organizations that would use the sign to present information to other interested people. As for example, the church itself. And the church itself, while Catholic, is not restricted to Catholics. Any person who wishes to enter the church, use the church for prayer, contemplation, participate in Mass without receiving the Eucharist if you're not Catholic, those things are open to everybody. And the church has other activities that are also open to the general public. And by having this message board, we can present those messages to people who might be interested. The other organization is the school. The school itself is open to all. You don't have to be Catholic to be a member to become a school member. You don't even have to live in Gahanna. You can live anywhere you wish, and you can enter the school and become a student at the school. We also have the athletic department, has various sports activities. Those are also open to anyone. You don't have to be a member of the church. You don't have to be Catholic. You don't have to be Christian. You can be any person of the proper age and the proper sex to participate in sports. So these are open to the public. And finally, and probably most importantly, is our Charitable Works Committee. Our Charitable Works offers food to families throughout the area. Again, not restricted to Catholics, not restricted to Christians, but open to all people that need help. They need financial help, they need food help. And this sign opportunity gives us the opportunity to help, to let those people know who are in distress. Maybe they have family members or friends or neighbors, relatives who are in distress, that they can come to St. Matthew at particular times and hours and days and receive the help they need. By having the opportunity to have all 4 messages on a rotating basis, we believe actually enhances the city of Gahanna, improves the environment in the city of Gahanna, and makes the city of Gahanna a more pleasant place to live. Now, as far as the constitutional aspect of the restriction, we believe this is a content-based restriction. It's not content-based because of anything that's being said. It's content-based because we can't have a rotation. And the Supreme Court of the United States has noted that when it comes to an on-premise sign, that those signs that are content-based have to survive strict scrutiny. And strict scrutiny requires that there be a compelling government interest that needs to be protected. It also requires that it be narrowly tailored. Now, the courts have also held that traffic safety, which I note is probably the one issue that the city of Gahanna would be concerned about with regard to rotational signs, that traffic safety does not meet the compelling government interest. And that's in case law.
Counsel,
Yes.
if I can interrupt for a moment.
Sure.
It sounds like what I understood was that this is not a content-neutral restriction because the content changes from moment to moment. Is that, am I
Correct.
understanding you there correctly?
Correct.
Do you have any specific support for that in cases? Because that sounds unusual to me in that the restriction doesn't seem to have anything to do with what the content is, but only in how frequently the content is displayed.
Yes. So this is, it's United States District Court, Northern District of Ohio. It's XXL of Ohio Incorporated versus City of Broadview Heights. And the case citation is 341 Federal Supplement 2nd, 765. In that particular case, the restrictions did not deal with what was specifically on the sign. The restrictions dealt with the fact that there was information on the sign. And because there was information on the sign, that makes it a content-based restriction, and therefore it has to pass strict review. And that's on page 789 to 790 of the case that I cited.
Thank you, counsel.
Now, because the other thing, of course, is in addition, the other things that you list under 1165.01, I don't think the others, and counsel can correct me if I've missed something, but all of these don't seem to apply to this particular sign because it's not an old sign, it's not dilapidated. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything else that's listed. I would note that one of the issues under B, it says protect the public's right to receive information protected by the First Amendment of the United States, and I would suggest that that Section 10 actually further supports our request by allowing a rotational sign. You're allowing the public to receive information that's important to them, that may be important to them, that would allow them to participate in activities at St. Matthew. Now, going on, there is a separate aspect of this case. It's a fairly new legislative enactment, and it's called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, and that can be found at 42 USC 2000 CC. And in that enactment by the Congress, any entity that receives federal funding is prohibited from enacting restrictions on religious entities and institutionalized facilities with that, again, impede their religious rights. So in this particular case, what the section says, it essentially adopts the strict scrutiny requirement. The strict scrutiny, again, has to meet a compelling government interest and be narrowly tailored. Now, I'm assuming, and I can begin corrected if I'm wrong, that the city of Gahanna does receive federal funds in one shape or another, and the code section that I cite does not specify the nature of the federal funding. It just says there has to be federal funding, and since we have police officers here, and we have fire departments, and we have other agencies of the city of Gahanna, I'm going to assume, absent being corrected, that the city of Gahanna does receive federal funds of some nature or another. And given that, that also...
I happen to have written my law review article on Arlupa.
I'm sorry?
I happen to have written my law review article on Arlupa. One of the things required under the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act for the strict scrutiny to apply is that it must substantially impair the free exercise somehow. You might not have gotten to that yet, but how do these restrictions, in your mind, substantially impair that right?
It substantially impairs it because without the ability to present the messages that we would like to present, we don't have any other way to present those to the traveling public. They're not going to know about it. So we believe that's a substantial impairment. The sign is on the, along the street. Anybody can see it driving along. And if they're driving along in the area, then they live in the area, or at least they're around the area. And that would give them an opportunity then to participate in these activities. We don't know who drives around, who's close or far. So without them being here, their location, their physical presence on the street in the vicinity of the church is an opportunity for them to see what we're presenting. And we don't have any way to know who those people are. So if we can't present the sign, then we are substantially impaired by presenting this information to those who may take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Now, again, because that substantial requirement, that compelling government interest, again, as I indicated, is not found in traffic safety or in aesthetics or any of that type of thing, which is primarily what you list under Section B, we believe that we have presented appropriate information, appropriate case law support, and a basis upon for you to reverse the decision. We would ask that you take these into consideration and consider again how important it is for the city of Gahanna to allow people who travel through the city of Gahanna to see what kind of opportunities there are for them for worship, for sports, for education, and for financial assistance. And by allowing us to show this rotation, and again, we're open to, it doesn't have to be 30 seconds. That was, Mr. Harvey has suggested 30 seconds. I would think maybe even a minute rotation. We're willing to work with you on the rotation amount, but we believe that it would be important to have a rotation so that people can see all the various opportunities available to them at St. Matthew. Thank you very much for your time.
1 second, please. This is a point of, after the presentation, where board members can ask a question, but I do want to remind, I'm sure Mr. Roth is going to go into this, I do want to remind everybody, both my fellow board members and those of you in the audience, that the variance that we will be voting on later is 116509 4B, C, and D, which is the percent of the sign that is electronic versus not, the frequency of changing, and coloration of the electronic portion of the sign versus the background. There's nothing in the variance or those relative codified ordinance sections that we are not going to be saying that there's, freedom of speech or what you can put on the sign, but those are the three things that we will be voting on this evening. So with that, any questions from board members to the appellant at this point? Otherwise, we'll ask Mr. Roth to come forward. Questions this time?
I have a question. So you've been on this property for 20 years with the new church. How have you guys been conveying your messages to the different people in the area to this point without the digital sign?
Some of them, we have some semi-portable signs, like for the charitable works. There's a little sign, it's on the side of the driveway that says charitable works is available. For the athletics and the church, we have not been producing any signage on the property. We have a sign for the pancake breakfast, which comes up once a month. And then, of course, during election season, if there's a pro-life initiative or something like that, we'll have pro-life messages along the property. But other than that, we haven't had an adequate way to present our opportunities for the public other than
With temporary signage?
temporary signs or, putting ads in the paper or something like that.
I wanted to ask, is there any way to, do you have any way to measure the effectiveness of what you're using now opposed to what you could use in the future? Is there any effective measurement to let you know if your message is being successfully conveyed?
I am not aware of one, Mr. Stillwell. I apologize. I'm not sure that there would be a way to measure it since we haven't had the opportunity to put multiple signs on the property at one time. We have a school. I do know we put up a sign for the school for registration. An open house comes up occasionally, and that's like once a year. But the school has other activities too that people can participate in, or maybe they can come in midstream. So I'm not sure that we would have a way to calculate. I wish we could, but I don't think we can actually calculate that currently.
Got it.
You mentioned, your pancake breakfast once a month, and you're putting out a temporary sign maybe for a couple of other things. Has there been any pushback or notifications from the city that they had any objections to those kind of temporary signs?
I'm not familiar with any, okay, if I look at Mr. Harvey. So apparently, there's been no pushback on the temporary signs.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? We will have opportunity after the rebuttals. If any of you come up with any other questions, we'll have another chance. But
I would
go
note
ahead.
too, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, that our concern is the frequency of messages. I think we can comply with the requirement of one color, black background with white. I don't think color is important. I think the sign size, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, that we can meet the requirements of the size of the sign. Currently, I don't think that's an issue. I did forget one thing, though, and I apologize.
Go ahead. You still have time.
The city, the high school has a sign that does not comply with these restrictions. And I believe there's an exception in your code for government entities. And I would suggest that that does actually present a different problem for the city of Gahanna, because that suggests an equal protection issue, and also, again, more content-based, because we're a religious institution, and therefore you've got a high school that has a sign that doesn't meet the requirements. It also suggests that the city of Gahanna does not really believe that a rotating sign causes traffic concerns, or they, I think, would have asked the high school not to present a rotating sign. So I think that should be one other element that should be included. Thank you very much.
Council, do you know how often the sign at the high school rotates?
As I drove past, I saw two different, just in my driving past high school, I saw two signs, so it's two messages. So at least it was within 30 seconds.
And is there, one last question, is there any difference in the setback of the sign that is in question that you're wanting to do and the sign that is in the school system? Is there a
Yes, it is. I think it's
distance?
set back a little bit farther. I don't know exactly how far, but it is farther back. But it's still visible from the road, and I think that's the issue. If you can see it from the road, then if it's a distraction, it's a distraction. So I'm not sure that would change it, but I do understand the point you're trying to make, and I would agree that it is farther back than our sign would be.
Got it, okay.
So you're saying that you would be willing to make concessions on the size of the electronic surface of the sign to meet the
Yes.
code requirement and forego the multiple colors?
Right,
to meet
black and white is
the code
sufficient.
requirement?
Yeah.
So the only thing then in that case that you would be arguing against would be the duration of the message changing?
Correct. And again, we're open to a longer cycle if you thought a longer cycle would be appropriate. We just, I think at least a minute, but, we're open to suggestions if it needs to be a little longer than a minute, but I think a minute, certainly it shouldn't be any more distracting than just the sign being there.
Would you be willing to match the setback where the school sign is currently?
We won't be able to because our building's too close to the road already. So we could push it back some, but I don't think we could push it back to where it'd be the same setback.
Got it.
And the setback location was already approved,
On the
right?
last,
Correct.
yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
The last one was.
Setback and height.
And
height.
which
Was
you're
already approved, so that's not,
kind
it's
of
important, but
grandfathered
is,
into it.
it's
Yes.
not important, or it's not part of our appeal for tonight. But you are correct, that was already approved by Planning Commission.
And have you asked the sign manufacturer to provide a new rendering with the reduced percentage of the digital area to the rest of the sign?
I haven't, but I'm sure we could. So Mr. Harvey instructs me that we would, like a 50%, I think it was supposed to be 1/3, 50% of the sign service be electronic. It would be part of the variance. So 50% instead of a 1/3 portion of the sign. And we could produce a rendering at 50%.
So procedurally then, if we found in favor, you'd still end up having to go back for the design review application for the final design. Am I correct there?
I would think so, yes.
And Mr. Clerk, should that go back through, who would that go back through? Would that come back to here again or go back to Planning Commission?
Seems like that would
I don't know, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here.
Go ahead.
Perhaps you could approve it pending approval of the final rendering. So you could say approve, but with an option to disapprove if you don't like the rendering. So you say, we'll approve it if the rendering itself is satisfactory, and if you don't like the rendering, then you disapprove it. I don't even know if that's possible, but.
If I may, one of the dispositions of appeal is that you may find in favor and amend with modifications.
Right.
So you have the ability to do that here as far as your judgment today.
Right.
But we wouldn't have the design to approve based on a design review tonight, in any case, right? So it would be kind of pending or guessing at what the design would be.
Yes, the other option would be to remand with instructions for Planning Commission to review the new design.
Right. Which is probably the way to go. Okay. Anything else? Thank you.
No, we have,
Okay.
how much time we have left?
I'll give you about 2 minutes is what was left.
Hello. My name's Tom Liskay. I'm 457 Tresham Road here in Gahanna. Moved here in 1987 and been a parishioner ever since, been active there at St. Matthew's. And I was the one that produced the extract from the manual on uniform traffic control devices. That manual is about 1,000 pages long. They have everything on signs to include if we get hit with a nuclear burst about maintain top speed while you're driving through this area. And the reason I passed this out is that the recent manual published in December of last year, effective actually today, January 18th, is that they've added more information on what they call CMS, changeable message signs. The federal government and the highway safety community realize that changeable message signs are very informative and appreciated by motorists. A lot of things have changed since we thought of electric signs, where like you still see in front of a VFW or American Legion, where they got the plastic black letters and the arrow pointing and talking about steak fry or fish fry or something like that. These signs are now on our highways. They're recognized as safe. We see them on 670 going back and forth. The state of Ohio just got in a little trouble over some cute sayings they were saying on those signs about, don't worry about being late, drive slower, you're only going to your mother-in-law's house. And the feds told them to stop that. So my sole purpose is to tell you is that changeable message signs are for the driver to pass on information. The person in the car will be looking at our sign and receiving the information that we want to give out. And finally, you remember that unfortunate school shooting in Perry, Iowa? And I saw one still picture at the start of the incident and said something like, "Welcome back, students," because it was the start of their semester. Then later on, I saw another still that said, "Parents," and the first 3 letters of the next word was CHE. I assume, my speculation is that is check at the Methodist Church or the Catholic Church to reunite with your children. We have a school there with over 600 children, and heaven forbid if anything ever happened, but these changeable signs are the way we would get the message out early to the traveling public. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
All right. Mr. Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Eisen pointed out something very crucial earlier. This is the Board of Zoning and Building Appeals. This is not a court that decides the constitutionality of ordinances. I think what the appellee is arguing here is that a part of our electronic sign code is unconstitutional. But again, This board is not empowered with making that decision. This board is empowered with hearing appeals of actions taken by the Planning Commission. The city of Gahanna does not impair free speech, ever. We don't impair religious speech. But courts have held that government entities can regulate the size and placement of signs, and they can enact reasonable regulations as to the materials and appearance in those signs. Communities can say you can't have internally lit signs. That's different than saying you can't have any sign. We're not telling the appellee that they can't have a sign. We're not telling them they can't have an electronic sign. We're not telling them they can't have an electronic sign that rotates its message. All of those things are allowed in our code. What this board is charged with tonight is an appeal regarding the size of the electronic sign, the number of colors in the electronic sign, and how often that electronic sign can change. When this application was heard in front of Planning Commission, the appellee came in and said, we've had this sign since, I don't remember if it's since the building was constructed or since there was a remodel, I forget. But the sign is wooden. It's a very lovely sign. It's a wooden sign and it's decaying, it's falling apart, they need to change it. They thought because of the need to change it, this would be a good time to consolidate all of our temporary signs they put out for food pantry and Easter and everything else into one sign that can change. It's a great plan. There were discussions at Planning Commission about how close this sign is to the right-of-way, because I think it's 1 foot from the right-of-way and our code requires 15 feet. The church explained that based on where the building is, how wide the road has become, and I think there's a storm drain or something in there, that they can't move the sign back. Planning Commission granted their variance for the placement of the sign. It was also explained that the sign that they want to put in is almost exactly the size of the current sign. I think it's just maybe an inch or two bigger. And Planning Commission said, fine, you can have that bigger sign because the electronic sign is a box and their current sign is curved at the top. Those are the kinds of things that variances are for. Our electronic sign code says you can have a electronic sign that is 1/3 the size of the total sign. So 1/3 electronic, 2/3 standard sign. The sign that is presented before you and what was presented to Planning Commission does not meet that requirement. I think it was explained during that meeting that the electronic signs come from the manufacturer with thousands of colors on board that they can do all kinds of amazing things with the LED signs. There was discussion at the Planning Commission about how many colors. We have limited the school and Burger King, I think, to 1 color on a black background. They don't always comply, we know that, because the signs are capable of much more. But there was discussion about that. There was discussion about the number of times it rotates. And cars going past, it's a 35-mile-an-hour zone. They don't want to get multiple messages to every car, but they want to get multiple messages out more often than once a day. That's something that our sign code does not allow, but it is something that a variance could grant them permission to. What is important here for this board to know, there are, and it was presented by Ms. Kapka from the city, there are a number of criteria that are to be considered when granting a variance. Practical difficulties complying with the code, the beneficial use of the property without a variance, whether the variance is substantial, whether the granting the variance would alter the essential character of the area, whether the surrounding properties would be negatively affected, whether the granting the variance would adversely affect government services, did the property owner know of the restrictions when they purchased the property? I don't think that's applicable here. Whether there are viable alternatives, Would the spirit and intent of the zoning code be honored if the variance is granted? Is the sign compatible with the character of the neighborhood? And whether there is a detriment to public safety. Those are the factors that Planning Commission had to consider, and those are the factors that the BZBA has to consider. Nothing else. Nothing else was considered by the Planning Commission. There were no extraneous discussions about things that aren't pertinent to our code or to the factors that are required to grant a variance. During the Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Hicks said that he just felt that the factors for granting a variance weren't met. Mr. Wester felt that the electronic sign was too close to the road and would be a distraction. Mr. Suriano stated in his comments that Mr. Hicks said it very well, that the conditions just weren't met. So when you look at the conditions that are in the code, you have to decide, has the appellee met those requirements for this code? I would argue they have not, and that the Planning Commission's decision was the correct decision. This board, however, can have a different opinion on that. I don't feel, on behalf of the City Planning Commission, that the sign as presented would ever comply with those things. But if you had a restriction, I think really what we're coming down to is the 1/3, 2/3 split between the electronic sign and the standard sign and how often it rotates. I think this panel could certainly send it back to Planning Commission saying we're granting variances from those codes. If they come in with a sign that says, 60% 40 and rotates once every 10 minutes, something like that, that could then be honored if they come in with a sign like that. But that's what this panel is to decide. It is not whether our ordinance is constitutional or not.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
I read some of the notes from the Planning Commission and some of the things that City Planner Matty Kapka did say, and the appellant brought this up also. So the Hamilton Road corridor in the area of from the Kroger to the Burger King to the high school, a little more congested. There are some different types of signs there. Some are closer to the road, some of them are farther away. Was there any discussion, and so much faster paced moving area? It was also mentioned that where the church is, call it more of a residential area. Was there any discussion that I didn't read in here or anything else that you've heard from staff about that being a difference here for, it was again mentioned that there's some changes in the high school sign and others versus allowing it to happen here, slower speed and residential, and just a different kind of area than the heavy-duty Hamilton Road corridor?
Yes, and some of the Planning Commission members were on Planning Commission before we even allowed electronic signs.
Right.
There have been applications that were turned down both before and after. The discussion at Planning Commission, if I recall correctly, dealt with there's a wooded area across the street. We're not going to bother anybody there. There is one house to the west that touches on the church property. To the east, there's a roadway and then like a multifamily property. The sign is not visible from anything to the south of the church property. So there were discussions about there's really one homeowner there that is in proximity to the sign. I think there was more discussion about how close the sign is to the roadway. And I also recall there was some discussion about this sign is set to automatically dim at night, so it's not as distracting, a bright light facing drivers or that residence that is to the west.
Okay. Other questions from the board for Mr. Roth at this point? Okay. Thank you. At this time, we will allow the appellant 5 minutes of any further comments or rebuttal.
Thank you very much. Well, council's correct. that You're not required to consider constitutional issues that will be raised by this application. But I would note that there are lots of case law in the U.S. District Courts that deal with this exact issue, which means that when somebody doesn't receive what they believe to be a fair and just decision, they push it on up the line. And I suggest that could very well happen here. So you are allowed to consider constitutional issues. You're not required to, but you certainly can consider them. And it sounds like you have an attorney on board, which is even a better benefit because you can discuss with him his view of the Constitution and how that impacts the city of Gahanna. I would just suggest that based on what council argued for the various criteria, it sounds like it's a matter of opinion. And when I read the notes, but that were from the last, the committee, the variance, that the people that considered the variance, all they said was they didn't feel that this would work. They didn't feel this was right. I'm not sure that's how we make decisions. We make decisions based on logic and reason. And we look at the facts and we say, does this make sense from a practical standpoint? Does this help the community? Does this benefit somebody? Not that, I just don't feel like it. That's not a good answer, I don't think. I think that's a terrible answer. So I would suggest that we need to look at the facts, the fact that we have 4 organizations that will help this community, that will expand the opportunities for this community to participate in church, in school, in athletics, and in receiving the help they need when they're in financial straits. That's the issue that I would suggest you should consider. So I would respectfully request that you grant the variance, and even if you want to take it under advisement as to the ratio of the sign, again, we can work with you on that. I think 50% is fair, but if 40% works, you know, I mean, we're not stuck in the mud on that particular issue, and the color is not the issue at all. We'll go black and white. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable opportunity for you to take this case and show that the city of Gahanna wants its citizens and those driving through it to be welcomed, to be honored, and to be assisted when they need assistance. Thank you.
And I will remind the board that this will not be one vote tonight. There have been 3 variances requested. As I mentioned earlier, it's 116509B, C, and D. And as Planning Commission did, we will be doing the same. We will be voting on these individually. Mr. Roth, any more?
Nothing further.
Okay. All right. As was mentioned earlier by the city attorney and in the Board of Building and Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure, again, we will be voting individually on these items. The board has 3 options when it comes to the point of making a motion and then ultimately voting how you all are going to vote. We can find in favor of the appellant or the appellee. We can find in favor and amend with modifications, or we can remand with instructions to city official, employee, or other body, which potentially which very much would be Planning Commission. So those are our 3 options. So where we are going to go next is our opportunity here is one by one. I will ask for a motion from the floor and then a second. And normally what we would do, just to keep everything clear for everybody here in the room, that we would vote on a motion in the positive. So we would be voting for the motion to be in favor of the first, second, and third variance. A second then, but before the roll call happens, as normally that we do, there is allowed discussion by board members. It is not an internal discussion amongst ourselves. It is opinion and your final thoughts. And again, we're going to do that 3 times. You do not have to do that if you don't want, but I'll open the floor to the members.
Just
Go ahead.
for, I think a point of order here. It looks like there are actually 4 things on appeal, that there are the 3, the B, the C, and the D, and also the denial of the design review application.
Okay.
So I think there are actually 4 things
Okay.
that we would be dealing with.
Right. Thank you for that. So, Oh, let me turn that off. All right, with that, as long as everyone's clear, anything? Okay. With that, we will move on to, we'll start with the variances. We'll stay in the order that they were listed up on the agenda that you are all seeing out there, up there. So, I will ask for a motion, and then I'll ask for a motion on the first variance listed, which is 1165.09A4B, which is the variance associated with the percentage of the electronic sign. Current code states that there is a maximum of 33.3%. What is being asked right now is, well, currently asked in, based on what was presented, may be different here tonight, was more than that. So with that, I will ask for a motion on the first variance.
I motion to remand back to Planning Commission with a revised proposal, since you've already said that you're willing to alter the proposal to meet the existing code, to remand back to Planning Commission with that. A redesign of the sign.
Are you stating that for all variances, or, I mean, again, the first one, the first one is on the percentage of the sign. So I believe the offer was 50% and 40%. I mean, the code is 33.3%, 1/3.
I would ask if you're going to grant with a percentage other than the 33% that's in the code, that you state what percentage it's granted to, and then they could come in with an application at that percentage instead of just remanding to come back with something, because if Planning Commission gets it again, they're going to say the code is 33%. If you're granting a variance to something other than that, give us the amount, basically.
I agree with you.
That might shorten it for everybody.
So do you want to provide a revised motion?
I guess I'm not prepared to say if I think 50% is the appropriate amount or not, so I would say come back with a design that shows us what it looks like at 33%, as is already stated by the code.
So that would be then, your motion would be to find in favor of appellee, City of Gahanna, it sounds like, since you'd be saying deny the request for variance and keep it at what the city code says, the 33%? Am I understanding you right?
Yes.
Okay. I would second that motion.
Okay. Again, I'm going to turn to the city attorney because I want to make sure that if we talk in any negatives, that it's clear what we're voting on, because our choice could be to, and no disrespect, our choice could be to vote on the appeal, which is at a greater than 33%, and those in favor would say yes, and those that believe that it needs to be a lesser number would say no. So I want to make sure that we're stating this correctly and making it the clearest message from the board.
Yes, so as the rules indicate and as you have indicated, the motions must be made in the positive, but that can be in favor of the appellee, which would be the City of Gahanna Planning Commission. So the motion is proper. So
Okay.
you would be voting yes or no to uphold the decision of Planning Commission, which was to deny the variance. So an affirmative answer of yes to this motion as pending on the floor would be to deny the variance.
All right, is that clear amongst everybody here? Okay. All right, at this point, I'm going to open the floor to any discussion on what you've heard. Again, discussion directly related to the percentage of the sign, of being electronic versus not. Any thoughts from anybody? Okay, I'm going to interject a thought here that really does apply to all three. I'm not going to say it 3 times because that would not be good use of our time. I am the one board member who was a board member in 2019. A case came up at Peace Lutheran Church. These items, the other items are not in question, and they weren't at that time about right-of-way and height. And I'm not saying that this should sway the other board members in any way, but I will tell you that, again, a sign, similar sign, it just happened to be a church, so it is a similar case. And the motion of the Board of Building and Zoning Appeals at that time was modifications with the electronic sign to be one color amber on a black background, which is meeting 1165.094D. One message daily, which meets 1165.094, and it would not scroll or move, which is part of that. And the only reason that we didn't talk about 1165.094B, which is the percentage of the sign, because they did not come in asking for a larger portion of the sign to be electronic. And they were going to use the rest of the sign for stagnant letters, and they had that opportunity, whether there was one or more programs that the church had, that was their opportunity in the stagnant portion of the sign to do that. So again, I just bring that up. Again, I'm only going to bring it up once, but that was a decision by this board just a couple years ago, back in 2019. So with that, any other comments by board members?
It's a pretty big sign. I mean, it needed a variance for height because it's big, it's close to the road. A third seems like enough.
I guess my only comment is it was granted an increase from 72 inches to 78 in the last meeting, which is a 10% increase. To go from 33 to 66 doesn't seem necessary when you've already increased the sign 10% in the vertical. You should be able to get your message across in a 33% electronic percentage of the overall sign when you've already increased the sign size already by 10%.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, with that, we should probably read back the motion that is on the floor, and then I will call for a roll call vote.
I have a motion by Beckman, a second by Bryson, with respect to 1165.09A4B to find in favor of the appellee upholding Planning Commission's denial of the variance.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Beckman.
Yes. Yes.
Bryson.
Yes.
Eisen.
Yes.
Burmeister.
Yes.
Stillwell.
Yes.
All right. We will move forward with the second appeal, which is 1165.094C. And again, electric copy may not change more than once per day. Again, I will ask for a motion, and then we will open the floor for commentary. So is there a motion on the current request? And that request, again, is from, to change to every 30 seconds from what is mandated by ordinance to be not more than once per day.
I'm trying to think of the way to verbalize it.
Sometimes what we end up doing is kind of putting it the best we can and
Yeah.
fixing it when we
Yeah.
figure out what we're really moving
And
for.
we'll get some assistance from the city attorney if we need to make sure that the official motion is worded properly so that we are voting correctly
Okay.
in the correct manner.
Then I would be in favor of amending with modification of no more than once per hour. Is that?
Yes, so that would be to find in favor of the appellant. And with modification to change it to once an hour. That would be a proper motion, yes.
Is there a second for that motion?
I would actually second that one. Once per day seems to kind of defeat the purpose of making a sign electronic. Because you could send somebody out there with the little letters and stick them up once per day.
All right. Well, that was a good opening for discussion. So I will say, anybody else thoughts on the motion, which is to not, we're not actually, again, codified ordinance says once per day. The motion on the floor is that that would be allowed up to once an hour, 24 times a day. Any comments from other members? All right. With that, I guess for the record, we'll have you read the motion back, and if we're all in agreement that we heard it correctly, then I'll call for roll call.
I have a motion by Burmeister and a second by Bryson with respect to 1165.09A4C to find in favor of the appellant with a modification of 1 time per hour.
All right. With that, we'll do roll call.
Burmeister,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Bryson,
Yes.
Stillwell,
Yes.
Ison.
No. All right. At a vote count of 4-1, that motion has passed. And our next variance motion is, as we said, 1165.094D, which has to do with the color of the sign, color rendering. Again, the code talks about colors for electronic portions of signs are limited to amber, white, or similar color. That would be for the lettering, with only one background color. Background color is limited to black. So, yeah, again, what we've all seen in, while there is multiple colors that are being shown, while it talks about some dimming, it is a variance from what is in the code. So, with that explanation, I hope that helped. Looking for a motion on the floor to, relative to our third variance request, A4D.
Appellant told us they don't really care about the colorization, so I move for finding in favor of appellant, the City of Gahanna Planning Commission, on the third, and upholding the denial of the variance.
Just to clarify for the record, the city of Gahanna is the appellee in this matter.
Thank you. Yeah, I was looking at the word appellant while I was thinking appellee. Appreciate it.
I also had it wrong during
Yes.
the entire presentation.
Ease and answer hard. So, yes, my motion then, in favor of appellee, City of Gahanna Planning Commission, upholding the denial of the variance.
I'd second that motion.
Seconded by Mr. Stillwell. Any discussion? I will just say that as a designer, I appreciate what was done on the sign. However, I believe in accord with other signs, including in the heavily trafficked Hamilton Road corridor at the high school, at the Burger King sign, those signs are single color with the black background. And I will not be voting in favor of, or I'll be voting in favor of the Appellee Planning Commission's decision. Any other thoughts from any of you? All right. Well, with that, we'll move forward to a roll call.
Do you want me to read back the motion?
Yes,
first?
please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion by Bryson, second by Stillwell, with respect to 1165-094D to find in favor of the appellee upholding Planning Commission's denial of the variance.
Very good.
Bryson,
Yes.
Stillwell,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Eisen,
Yes.
Burmeister.
Yes.
All right. Our last item here is, again, the fourth item you're seeing up there is denial of DR-0016-2023, a design review application for the monument sign. Let me ask you, Madam City Attorney, we voted on individual aspects of the sign. Now we're moving forward with the design review application. So implications of those decisions based on the application, which I know I've got it here. Any thoughts, or I'll ask Mr. Roth too, any thoughts on how those two should be related, just in making sure that we are discussion and voting on that in a proper manner?
I would think that, given the first and third votes that you just had, that the design that was presented is not in compliance.
Right.
So I don't know how you could, I guess, change the Planning Commission's non-approval of that sign when two of the three factors are just not present.
Exactly. I just want to make sure that everyone is clear what we're doing. And so, any other thoughts from anybody before I call for a motion? Okay. So, looking for a motion on denial of DR-0016-2023. A motion from anybody?
For procedure clarification, is there like a big difference or cost between approving the denial and coming back with another design application in light of finding in favor of the appellant on the middle part and denying it or remanding with instructions to kind of follow the other or things on everything else?
I think Mr. Blackford can answer as to how this will proceed from here.
Great questions. We're kind of having a side discussion on that as well. And I think as far from a procedural standpoint, the cost of a design review application is $200. There's fairly limited staff review that would have to go to Planning Commission. So if this were denied, I would, my notes I was just writing was to follow up with the applicant to have them file a new design review. That would have to be scheduled for Planning Commission after we get all the revised material. So that might take anywhere from a month to 2 months before they would get back before a Planning Commission meeting.
And if the Planning Commission had to look at a design review application that was amended anyway, would that take about the same time?
The most likely Planning Commission historically gives their thumbs up or thumbs down in one meeting. So it'd be about 2 months, maybe to be safe, from start to finish, which would be filing of application and a decision by Planning Commission.
So there wouldn't really be a benefit to anyone in saying, remand it, have them do a new application, new design review application, and decide on that one in light of what we've said here. That wouldn't really change anything for anybody, is kind of what it's sounding like?
I apologize, I'm not quite sure I followed there.
I could be overcomplicating it.
Well, I think what we'd like to see is, I think we voted on 3 of those items. We voted on the 3 variances. What is in the best interest of the church, the best interest of the city, the least cost because there's cost of an application, but there's cost of time and money of everybody's that's sitting out there and up on this board, not to mention the time of Planning Commission. So we want to do what is best for everybody and most economical, still following all the rules of order, but let's do it best for everybody and save time and money for the city and for the church.
That's exactly what I'm aiming at, Mr. Eisen. Thank you.
So we want your help to figure out which.
Blackford and I just discussed it. I think what you're trying to say is if you remand it with these changes, they can come in with a sign that complies with what you voted on tonight and go forward with the currently pending application without paying another $200 fee, or have the church pay another $200 for a whole new application. Mr. Blackford said they would prefer if it's just remanded, they can come in with a new design, they won't have to pay a new fee. If it complies with what you voted on, it would be handled that way.
Does that sound reasonable? I think it is too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see a reason to do a whole new application if they can take what they got from you tonight and come in with a sign that complies with that.
I would agree.
All right. So does that end up constituting a remand then? Because that's what it sounds like to me. Okay. Then I would move to remand for decision on a design review application with a new design that complies with the variances that we've approved, the variance we've approved and the lack of variances we haven't approved. That
Close
complies with
enough,
our
or would
decision
you
today.
like to put that in some words? I think you catch what we're trying to get done here.
I think that the appropriate motion would be to remand to Planning Commission with instructions to allow an amended design review consistent with this body's findings.
Thank you.
Sounds great. We will accept Mr. Bryson's motion with clarity by the city attorney. And with that, I will ask for a second.
I second that motion.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Stillwell. So I will turn to the clerk to basically what we heard here and from the city attorney, that to read off what we will be voting on here in a second during a roll call.
A motion by Bryson, a second by Stillwell with respect to DR 0016-2023, remanding to the Planning Commission with instructions for an amended design review consistent with the Board of Zoning and Building Appeals findings this evening.
Agreed. Roll call, please.
Bryson?
Yes.
Stillwell?
Yes.
Beckman?
Yes.
Eisen?
Yes.
Burmeister?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you all in the room for helping us get through that, and I hope that we have made that, we've made the best decision on that, and again, the most economical and time beneficial. With that, that is the end of our agenda for this evening. Are there any other items that anyone needs to bring up other than what we've discussed and voted on this evening? No? All right, well, with that, we'll close the meeting, and I want to congratulate our two new board members and welcome them to the team. So thank you very much. Looking forward to the next meetings. And with that, we will adjourn. Thank you.
It's tough one to work your way through.
The what?
Yeah, my first one.